And that'll be the X factor. Don't try to focus on who you need to be.
Everyone, welcome to Middle Manager Mastery podcast with me, your host Shruti Rustagi. Today we have with us a distinguished leader who's worked across 18 markets. Hi, Prashant. Prashant has 25 years of experience across multiple industries in consumer engagement, martech, and digital transformation across 18 markets. So, Prashant, welcome and tell our audience a little bit about your leadership experience.
Thanks, Shruti. When I heard you say 25 years, it made me feel really old. I think that's the reality of our lives. I have actually worked across five different industries, companies of varying sizes. And after I left corporate a couple of years ago, I now work with startups, with mid-sized scale-ups. I myself am a failed entrepreneur. So I've experienced the high of building up to 180,000 users and then seeing it crash pretty down quickly. I do some angel investing. And most recently, I authored a book called Cliff, which is about a money mindset for longer lives and shorter careers, which I think is something that every leader now needs to understand. And every person in the corporate world now needs to be clear that they need to create the money cushions for themselves because these careers are just getting more unstable.
Very, very true. And well said, Prashant. I will say that we had the discussion earlier as well about how you came about with this book and the concept and your wide industry experience. What I want to talk to you today about is really a little bit more on your industry and your leadership experience since you've led teams and you've led middle managers. I'd love for you to put on that lens and talk to us a little bit about some of the topics that you and I have been talking about, like executive presence, right? So let's jump right in. When a middle manager comes to you and they say, I don't understand why senior leaders don't take me seriously in a room, what would you say is going on and how would you tackle something like this?
Look, I think, Shruti, the middle management, I feel, is one of the toughest places to be because it's your quintessential what got you here doesn't get you there. If you know what I mean, right? So people have gotten to middle management because they've been very competent in what they've done. They've mastered the skills, they've demonstrated impact. But the playground changes in middle management. And when I find people saying things like this, or unprompted me giving them that coaching, it's predominantly because they are still doing what worked for them and they're not realizing that now they need to modify that. Executive presence becomes a very important dimension of this because with senior management, you typically will get very defined windows of time. It might be a minute in the lift together, the famous elevator pitch stereotype. It's actually true. You get a minute together and you can either stare at the switchboard or you can actually make a point that may get you a further conversation. Even in reviews and conversations, a lot of the questions end up getting directed to your boss. You might get the occasional throwaway line here and there. So, how do you use it? What do you say? How do you show up? How do you come across as someone they want to have a subsequent discussion with? That element is something that doesn't come intuitively to everyone, right? They need to recognize that. Now, I've seen that all the time, and I see that funnily enough more with high performers. Because the problem with high performers is that they did really well with the playbook they knew. So
Hmm.
they believe somewhere subconsciously it gets cemented. That's all they know. They believe that that's what they use. The first time they're in a scenario where things don't go as smoothly as they expected, suddenly they're lost. They begin to get worried. They think maybe I should just stay quiet. They're looking for cues around them, right? So a lot of this focuses on helping them see that, okay, expand your playbook, create mechanisms for psychological safety for yourself, see where I can support you, and then it's really a do and learn by doing kind of an approach.
Hmm. Interesting. So, first of all, I really liked the fact that you mentioned that many of the high performers are the ones who will suffer the most here because they think that whatever they've done so far is going to work ahead also. Now, You said something like define a playbook and be psychologically safe with whatever the environment is, and then ask for help or ask for guidance. Let's start with the first one. When you say define the playbook, how do you think they can define the playbook, or rather, what should be the critical elements of that playbook that they need to build constantly and hone?
I think the biggest one, Shruti, is know your audience. Okay.
Hmm.
So, for example, when you are at the operating end of things, you are in the weeds with details. That is your superpower.
Right.
When you are with executives, senior leaders, etc., they expect you would have got all that. So you have to think about what do they want to know? What are they looking for? It's your classic think audience first versus think what I need and what I'm ready to convey. Right. So first understand what they want. Then you begin to also look at what do I want from them? What
Hmm.
is this interaction? What am I looking for it to do? Do I want a follow-up meeting? Do I want them to think, oh, okay, Shruti is awesome? Do I want them to just say, feel that the project or the assignment is on track? Do I want
Hmm.
them to sign off on a decision? Here's the way you take them in that conversation,
Makes
right?
sense.
I think the people who nail that are actually our children. They know how to instinctively manipulate their parents into what they want. So I
Very,
think
very
it's a
true.
gift we are born with, and somewhere along the lines we lose it.
So true. Because, as you were speaking about knowing your audience, sometimes what becomes really difficult is knowing how much detail is enough for this audience. Because I'm now thinking back from the perspective of a middle manager who doesn't get to present to the executive leadership very often. Maybe it's a once a quarter thing or something like that. Now, once a quarter, and this may be, I don't know, their first or second time doing it. How do they understand what's the right level of detail they could get into? Is there a model or a framework that you recommend one can use?
So Shruti, you develop it by doing. So I tell you once where I completely got it wrong and how I
Okay.
pivoted it. Okay, nothing like learning from your own disasters, right? So my
Very true.
first presentation to the group CEO of a company, large company, and my boss told me he wants to discuss search market. Okay, now, this man is in his 60s. We go in, we are in his boardroom. He asks me a question about search marketing, and I begin to explain it in what I think are simple terms. And I see him glance at his watch. So he kind of goes like that, right? And I was like, oh, geez, he's completely not tracking. And in that moment, I stop and I say, actually, let me explain it differently. I know this guy is a crazy godfather. Okay. And I say, what if you went to Google and you looked up Big Bertha's latest striper? Then, and then I explained, how the next 6 years of his life, he would get it. Every piece of golfing equipment would show up. Suddenly, I see him nodding. Now it has become something that he can get and relate to. Now, if I hadn't seen him glance at his watch, he wasn't rude about it. It was a very subtle glance. I would have missed the cue that he isn't following the way I'm explaining, right? Here, my job isn't to give him the most accurate understanding of search marketing. He's not going to become a search marketer. I need to give him the comfort that I know search marketing so that he thinks it's in good hands,
Hmm.
right? Now, the minute I realize he's tuning out, he may still think, okay, this guy knows what it is, but it'll be accompanied by, but he's kind of technical and boring,
Yes.
right? I need him to say, this guy knows what he's talking about. And if the board member asks me again, actually, I liked his explanation, I might have this guy come in and explain,
Exactly.
right? That's what I want as the answer. Now, if I'd missed that cue, I would have completely messed it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the playbook involves a multi-sensorial approach. Don't come in so focused on what I have to
Blinded.
say, so memorized with what I have to say that you are not reading the room. You're not
Mm.
looking around. You're not lightening the atmosphere. You're missing the subtle cues. That is super important. In fact, I would argue that you can get an item wrong and backtrack, not a big deal. I'm very comfortable if I get a question which completely catches me off guard. I go, Give me a moment. Let me think that through." It's okay versus feeling like, oh my God, I have to answer right away. Right now, one of the mechanisms I do around the playbook with my teams is, and this connects back with psychological safety because the lack of that feeling is the reason they're not reading the room. This
Yes.
to memorize their script, right? Is I've always given them a very standard statement saying, in this match, you can always throw the ball to me, no preparation required. It's not
Mm.
your job to see whether I am ready to take that or not. It's my job to make sure that my eye is on the ball so you can kick it to me anytime. So if you're getting stuck, all you have to do is just smile, breathe, and say, Prashant, do you want to take that? Make it my problem. But don't make it my problem by looking like you're having a panic attack. Make it my
Exactly.
problem by making it look like you're giving it to. And where I'll be like, thanks, Shruti. Sure. Yeah. Let me give more context. Da, 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 da. So that has always been a rule that go in comfortable because you can always kick the ball to me at any point in time. No questions asked.
Interesting. So many things in that one, Prashant. So many things. Let's start with the very first one, right? One that you said, multisensorial approach. So, one, keep your eyes, ears, all the senses open because when you're speaking, don't just be with the blinders on. Actually, take in the input. The other thing, which you didn't say, but which your example very clearly shows, is have the presence of mind. Don't worry that somebody is going to say, oh, now you're changing tracks. You were explaining me in a different way. That's totally fine because the end objective, like we were talking about, what's your agenda? The agenda is very clear that this person should feel comfortable about me being an expert in the space and should be able to call me whenever that explanation is needed for further more leadership meetings, right? So, whatever gets me to that agenda is what I should focus on doing. So, don't worry if you have to change tracks. Don't worry if you have to say, okay, let me start again or give me a moment or have to pass the ball on to my boss because that is not the moment I'm feeling the best of. I love that. And the third thing which you brought up, which is so good, which is none of this is possible unless you're feeling psychologically safe in that environment. So essentially, it again boils down to don't fear failure, just test it out, try it out, see what works. And it's okay. You can get it right the next time.
Absolutely. And I think take more opportunities to be in these environments because the only way to get it is to have many of these. Now,
Very
again,
true.
typically, I mean, I've heard the whole first impression is the one that counts. I think that's all a crock of BS. No one really cares about you enough to remember, oh, I met Shruti 6 years ago. She wasn't very confident. They moved on to other victims, right? So at some point, even if your one interaction wasn't as good as it could have been, next opportunity, you have the ability to fix it. People more remember either dramatically memorable experience, good or bad, or they will remember the most recent one. Create a new recent example where you tend to do a little bit better, right?
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Spot on things, Prashant. And I think executive presence is so much about just feeling confident in your skin to a large extent. And that is what I would think made you do that, right? Change tracks and feel okay. Or even tell your team members that whenever you need to, just kick the ball to me. Because you feel fundamentally comfortable in wherever you are. Let's now talk about a slightly different concern that we face in managers, right? And please tell us if you already have examples of your team or something that you've gone through as well, wherein there could be a manager who's perfectly capable of taking many decisions on their own, but you see them come to you very often, right? And now The challenge that you're facing is that it's a mix of agency issue because you think that they are not owning it enough, that for everything that they are coming to you. And it's also probably a confidence issue somewhere. So, how does that manager start building like real ownership and agency with their direct instead of becoming a bottleneck?
So this is a bigger problem in some cultures because this whole element of let me make sure my boss is across it, or even, hey, it's so that I have myself covered, right? I mean, you see it where every email is copied to 1100 people because that's a mindset of saying, I've told everyone, now they can't come back and tell me, why did you do it that way? Or why did you say this? Right now, I follow always a two-part approach. One is that I used to tell my team that if no one complained about you to me in the month, you're doing something wrong, right?
You're not pushing them enough.
You're not pushing yourself enough, right?
Okay.
What's the worst that will happen typically, unless you go and completely mess up? People will just come in, hey, Shruti is being like this or something. And then all I have to say is, yeah, she's very enthusiastic. So sometimes she gets a little bit carried away. But, in all fairness, the point she was making is kind of valid, right? I'll work with her on the style, but let's focus first on the point. Right. So the ability to take personal accountability, to take initiative, to take agency, I think it came in a little bit more by my element of no one complained about it. Like, what's going on? Were you mentally on leave? So that then has been a funny but somewhat impactful way to remind people that they get to do this. The other is I've really had to work on this myself because
Mhm.
I have a preferred way of doing stuff. And I realized that when I kept sharing my way, I was actually, in a way, discouraging them from doing it their way, right?
Tell
And
us more about this.
so if I would say, okay, did you do it this way? Have you thought about this? In a way, I'm saying, do it mine,
Hmm.
which encourages them to check in on whether they're doing it my way, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
at some point, I realized that I was creating that bottleneck. And
Hmm.
I need to also have a level of faith that these are smart people. They are in the job. I need to let them play it out the way they want. Okay. It may not be the way I would have done it. They may get one or two things not as good as they could have, but they are going to get a few things much better than I could have. Right.
Hmm.
Because I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I've never hired with the attitude of I'm the smartest guy in the room. My attitude is I have to, if you don't know more than me, you're of not as much used to,
Yes.
right? The reason I
Absolutely.
want Shruti on my team is she knows topic X better than I do. If I know it better, then I'm going to be a teacher. I'm not going to be the boss. No point. So if I have hired you thinking that you are better than me, I have to give you the space to let you be better than me.
Hmm.
Right? I have to let you make your own learnings, mistakes along the way so you can be significantly better than. Now, I used to have a colleague. She didn't have the problem of needing to check in with me as much as her style was all about a confidence gap. She would start her
Hmm.
comments by, I don't know, I'm sure, I'm not sure, maybe this isn't the right time, but, and every time after her preamble, what she said was actually fantastic. Okay. Finally, in my frustration, I called her in and I was like, Janet, every time you speak, you add immense value. So, A, why don't you speak up more often? And two, why do you sound like you think you're getting it wrong? You're getting it wrong. Track record is pretty poor. You almost always get it right. And she was like, well, that's just how we grew up. That's just the style. We were taught that you have to wait for your turn. So we put a little piggy bank on my table. And the deal was every time she gave one of these qualifiers, I'm not sure, I don't know, she had to put $1 in it.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
And
How
we said,
rich were you by the end of the
I said, well, we were going to donate it at the end, but I was like, this is one donation that less is more. And I think the annoying act, because I would actually stop the meeting and I would just go, so one, if you work in the US, you don't always have cash in your pocket. So poor Janet had to have the stop, fish for $1 bill, put it in because I was just trying to make it incredibly annoying for her. Okay. And it completely worked. I mean, she is a rock star. She was always a rock star. She just needed to sound like a rock star. And she did. She learned. And when I left the job, she gifted me $1 bill. And that dollar is very special to me. I have it kept separately because and she called it the best investment she had ever made. And I think that is what it's all about. You have people who are incredible. Your job is to let them be incredible,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I see this playing out. That give them that space and let them do their stuff.
It's really good and powerful because I'm thinking that what you said earlier about I want people on my team who are better than me on certain things and they keep getting better at those things or other things because that is how we grow as a team. And so my job is really to give them the space to grow and give them the opportunities to grow. And then, of course, there are some cases where it's not so much about the agency, it's about confidence, like you mentioned. And so that would also, like you said, the qualifier bit, that would show up completely in executive presence too, because when she would be doing that in like senior leadership meetings and executive meetings, anybody would be kind of put off or they would start questioning what she's saying if they did not know better. So she was demeaning her own points, despite the fact that, like you said, she would always make a lot of sense.
And
That's something
I
really
hate
big
this stereotype, but I've seen it more often than not that women tend to
in
lead the
women.
squad.
Yes,
And the harsh reality is that more often than not, a point actually makes more sense than even they have realized, right? And I would keep telling, I was like, what's the worst that'll happen? It may not move the conversation forward. It may be a little off topic. The world won't fall apart. You're not going to say, well, look at her. What is she doing, right? Just say it. If you're thinking it, say it.
yeah. And I don't want to go down that route, but Prashant, I totally agree. I've seen that happen in women too. And I've seen the other side happen with women too. Like more often than not, even when people do believe that the point that they're making is pretty valid, I have seen the other side of the coin where just after 2 minutes, somebody else would just make that point and the people would go gaga over it. So I have seen both sides. So sometimes I don't know whether to support and say, why do women do it? Or say, well, why does it happen with women? So it's both.
I think you're spot on. Tragically, right? That it does happen. And I think that is where I'm not sure what the answer is, but I just think that when you are in the proverbial back of the bus for centuries, you'll have to keep fighting your way forward. And I do
Absolutely.
hope that more and more managers and leaders recognize that it is their job to enable that. I hope that a lot of middle managers realize that when they are in positions to create the support for others, that's how they pay it forward, right?
I would agree.
That's the only way this change will happen.
100%, 110%. All right. And yeah, I know I can talk hours on that topic, but let's come back to this because we've touched upon some really interesting ones, right? So we've touched upon the psychological safety aspect, being present aspect, confidence that shows up in the language that we use, and of course, also creating the environment for our teams to thrive, both as a leader who has middle managers reporting into them, but also as middle managers who have people reporting into them.
Mhm.
So, both ways we need to create those environments, right? Now, let's move to something. related to what you talked about a little bit, like giving them space to thrive. So, how do you think, and probably start us with an example, Prashant, where you have coached high performers or your own experience of when somebody coached you as a high performer? What are the best ways you think that one could do that? And how do you coach people to perform at the way you want them to versus where they have been performing so far?
That's a very interesting question because I think it's harder than it sounds. And the reason is that the only way you get people to do more is by giving them spaces where the stakes are high and they are not proven experts, which means you're putting yourself at risk in the process.
Correct.
Right. And that is not something we are intuitively as humans get to do. Risking us for us is one thing, risking us for someone else it doesn't come naturally to us. Right. Now, one of the ways in which I learned to do it was I have always seen that high performers struggle to themselves recognize what they're doing well.
Hmm.
Whenever I've generally asked a high performer about some feedback on themselves, just how they felt things went, they they've tended to focus on what they go well. Okay. And my belief is if you don't recognize the path to what worked, you won't consciously replicate that.
Hmm.
It may sound like the same thing, but it's actually not. Focusing on what to avoid is one part of the journey. Focusing on where to go is another part of the journey.
Very true.
I have had this very long standing technique that I have used with my team called 2 and 1. Every one-on-one would have a 2 and 1. The
Okay.
two was tell me two things you're proud of since the last time we met. And they can
Hmm.
be anything. They don't even have to be business things. Shruti's thing could be that I actually rescheduled this important meeting because my little girl had something in kindergarten that she was so excited about that I went to see her and cheer her up. I'm like, that's incredible.
Hmm.
So it can be anything that you're proud of. It forces people to think of what they're proud of. The other was something that you would have done differently.
Hmm.
And there, my focus is it does not have to be something you screwed up.
You
Okay.
could have done it well, but you think there could be a better way to do it.
Absolutely. So I did this. It worked really well. With the benefit of hindsight, if I had taken help from John on this project, this thing could have been done in half the effort.
Hmm.
Big lesson
Hmm.
learned,
Hmm.
right?
Very
Totally fine.
true.
I went in, I inserted my comment there, completely turned that person defensive. Bam, it still stuck. Damn, would have done it differently. Okay.
Hmm.
Now I would go in while I called it 2 and 1, it was you can have any number of proud offs, but they have to exceed the things done differently by at least one.
Hmm. Got
And
it.
my
Got it.
logic was that if you're not going to stand up for yourself, don't
Who
expect me
will?
to stand up for you.
Yeah.
I'm not your dad. Okay. It's not my job to look out for you if you are not ready to look out for you.
That's so powerful. And yes, I agree. And that I think is such a good thing because I'm sure as part of that proud moments, there would be also counting a lot of professional moments.
Yeah.
And
I mean, more
that
professional. And I,
exactly, and that would add up over time. Like when I'm sitting at the end of the year, I already have these list of accomplishments that I'm really proud of. So that's such a fantastic way.
well, I would also come with my list of what I saw that they did really well and
Hmm.
something that I wish they had done differently.
Hmm.
I would cheat. I would say I can have 1 and 1 because what I see may be different from what you see. Now,
True
what
that.
was super cool, and I have seen this across 5 different companies, what I call the goodie list almost always was different. The two different list almost always was the same. Okay. Now do the math. If you came in with 2 and 1 and I came in with 1 and 1, at the end of the conversation, we had 3 and 1.
3 and 1. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Now, the beautiful part of that was we would end up having the same item of do differently, but many times we would have a different reason for do differently.
Hmm.
So the conversation would make it a holistic conversation,
Very true.
right?
Very true.
The goodie list, as I used to lovingly call it, was because at time, now this comes back to your first question, because the goodie list at times, you as a middle manager may not know what is valued by other people around.
So
So
true.
you've chosen two items, you haven't chosen the third because, and I've seen incredulous expressions saying, why do you care about that? That was my job, right? And like, yeah, but most people mess that up. You didn't. Or so and so in passing said, hey, Shruti, you did a terrific job on that. Now, if we don't have this format, it may have been a throwaway comment. I may have forgotten to even tell you that.
That's so true. That is so
But
true.
because I had to do preparation going into the meeting, I'm like, yeah, Bill actually said Shruti did a really good job in that meeting. Now we can talk about, hey, Shruti, by the way, I have no idea what you did in that meeting. So just tell me, what did you do that Bill seems to have really liked? Now, when you tell me, you don't know Bill. You spent
Hmm.
maybe 10 minutes a month in front of him. I spent
Hmm.
hours a month in front of him. When you tell me the situation, I'm like, wait a minute, now let me tell you why Bill really liked it.
That
This
is so
is what
wonderful
happened.
because suddenly I'm able to read the audience from your perspective. And so next time I'm in front of Bill, yeah,
You are able to tap into my experience of knowing Bill better than your experience of knowing Bill,
yes.
because under normal circumstance, I wasn't there. I have no idea.
Hmm.
Right? Now, you could have told me your synopsis of the meeting would have been, hey, we got what we needed. We needed this decision. He signed off. That's it. I wouldn't have known the beautiful thing you said that got him completely clear and bought in had he not made the throwaway remark to me, hey, smart kid, you made sense. I mean, Bill is real, by the way, and that's exactly what he would have said had you
Okay.
made a comment in a complicated meeting. He would have said, smart kid, made sense. We're like, thanks. Then I would have first figured out which smart kid he was talking about, gone to said smart kid and said, what did you say?
No, this is so good. I do have one question, Prashant, and because you explained it too well, I don't think I need to rephrase it on what I understood. I have one question. How often have you faced a situation where somebody else's development moment or something they want to do differently was actually a goodie moment in your list and vice versa?
As in that their development opportunity was a
They
good
were
for me.
thinking I could do better, and
Very often,
somebody had
very often,
actually.
very often, very, very often. Okay. Because and the chronic problem with high performers, because they're being
Yeah,
so
I was
self-critical,
just thinking.
so self-critical that they are looking at the one dimension that they feel they messed up. And,
Hmm.
let's call it what it is. In many cases, they're right. They messed up that one dimension, but the totality was actually really good.
Hmm.
Then I can even give them that context and say, okay, okay, Shruti, yeah, that could have gone better. I get that. And we'll talk about what you could have done differently on it. But let's first focus on why this went really well overall. And that is the whole reason I call it do different. Because the do
Hmm.
different isn't about the whole package. It's about one dimension of it that now, with the benefit of hindsight, you could do it differently. Right?
Very true.
But we are
Very
going to
true.
focus also on what you did right. If you don't know that, you're not going to do it again.
That's true. That's true.
Right?
I love that.
But
Hmm.
I have been super fortunate, Shruti. I've had a lot of people who've invested in me. I've had a lot of people who've looked out for me. I've had a lot of good behaviors from senior leaders I've modeled. My first job, I was 20 when I joined the Stanley. Okay. I was a kid. And I was sitting in Bombay one Friday evening. I was feeling incredibly homesick. And my boss, Tarun, hopefully he will hear this and he'll remember it. He just looked at me and said, you're looking very low, not your usual self. So I just said, oh, I'm just missing home. So he didn't say anything. 10 minutes later, he comes and just says, will you need to go back to pack if you need to take a flight today? So it depends on where I'm going. My stuff there, it's like, yeah, okay, then bug off in an hour, leave for the airport straight. It's what's going on? He's like, no, I told the team you'll do a focus group there on Monday morning with some consumers. I had the agency guys in there. They line it up. I think it's the good part was he didn't say that he was doing it because of me. He said, I think it'll be useful for you to sit in on a direct consumer interaction. It's been on my list for a while. Why wait? Let's just
That's so sweet.
right. So it wasn't about you are looking low, you want to go home, so I'll let you go.
Hmm.
It was I need it done. Let's take care of it. Right now, that becomes a mechanism where you realize your a big job for middle managers is equally to feel comfortable about sharing where they are in their life and equally to look out for others, right? These dimensions is how things have to come together. This coaching isn't about, hey, I'm just going to teach you how to be better professionally. Coaching is about we need to learn together how we can be more impactful in our workplaces. And we can't be more impactful in our workplaces if we have big vacuums in our personal side,
That's true.
right?
And I think the way he embodied it for you, I think that was brilliant because it didn't just help you get to home and also then attend a focus group and also learn something. It actually helped you figure out that next time you're in his place and you have somebody similar like that, there could be so many creative ways to actually further the development and alongside sort out the personal thing.
Totally. And, because I was that young, it really got drilled into my skull,
Yeah,
right? And I'm like, if you take care of your personal stuff, you will be in a better place to take care of your professional stuff, right?
absolutely.
I mean, I dealt with it as a leader during COVID, where one morning, which I call the worst morning in your professional life, where three phone calls from three different team members, all within the span of 1 hour each, with more depressingly awful personal stuff than the other.
My
And
God.
in that moment, to then restructure how work will get redistributed. And in Asia, everyone is not okay sharing with everyone else.
Yeah,
So for one person, I was like, are you okay the team most? And he was like, I'd rather not. I said, that's not a problem. You're now off any clock because you don't want them to know. You will delegate up to me, you will not delegate down. Otherwise, they'll wonder, they'll ask, right? And that's the answer. And you do that because you have been also, you've seen the power of receiving that empathy and that kindness. Coaching works when you put it in an environment of empathy, of humanity. Otherwise, we can be replaced by machines. And frankly, then we should be replaced by machines. If you're going to take humanity out of it, right?
totally agree. If it's just resources, then
Mhm.
AI could very well do our jobs.
Hopefully not low value human capital resources. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Totally. No, totally. So, Prashant, I know we're at time. This has been super engaging, and thank you for sharing some really powerful anecdotes. I think stories always go a long way into drilling some messages in. I will never forget the incident that you just shared with Tarun and you. That is so powerful of how somebody can actually embody and create that coaching environment for someone who's so fresh. And those are the kind of things that obviously will get imprinted on you as a leader as you grow and
The
spread
funny
that.
part, Shruti, is that I am willing to bet that if Tarun hears this, he won't remember it because I think he has done this kind of decent leadership behavior so naturally and for so many different people that I don't think he would really recall it. But
Yeah,
I'm hoping somebody just say that I could have done that. I must have done that. But I don't think it was a very overt, let me take care of this kid kind of a thing. It was just, let me
so
just do it.
natural. Yeah, yeah. And that's the beauty of it, right? Like when it comes so naturally to you, that's when it's totally seeped in, and your team can feel the power of that empathy. So cool, Prashant. This was amazing. Thank you so much for all your stories and guidance. And I'll take away the two and one concept for sure. Any last thing that you would want to share with the listeners?
Just that I really think that middle managers need to feel a lot more comfortable in their own skin. Don't try to focus on who you need to be. Let yourself focus on who you are. Who you are is good. That's why you are where you are. When you're all the time focusing on where you need to be, you sometimes forget to let yourself acknowledge who you are and pat yourself on the back and give yourself credit for all the things you've done right to get to where you are. The more comfortable you are, the more it'll show your comfort, your confidence, your ease. That'll show to others. And that'll be the X factor.
So, with that message, thank you so much, Prashant. It was a pleasure having you.
My pleasure completely. Thank you for doing this.